The debate between capitalism and socialism stands as one of the most enduring and contentious conflicts in contemporary history. This struggle has withstood revolutions, toppled empires, bankrupted superpowers, and divided the world into opposing camps. For over a century, capitalism and socialism have transcended mere economic theories. They have emerged as battle lines that shape societies. Behind every impassioned speech, every labor uprising, every economic downturn, and every war fought by proxies, this conflict has molded the reality we inhabit today. Yet, there is a crucial point often overlooked by influential thinkers. Neither system functions as textbooks claim it should. Time after time, across various nations, this truth remains evident. When crises strike, whether through war, famine, inflation, or catastrophic economic collapse, the raw truth surfaces with brutal clarity. Welcome to the realm where finance intertwines with power and history, a place where complexities abound and simplicity is but an illusion. No longer would there be exploitation or the relentless cycles of booms and busts. Instead, they envisioned a world characterized by rational planning and equal dignity for all individuals. This concept resonated deeply with millions enduring the harsh realities of early capitalism, presenting itself as an antidote to their suffering. However, while this theory sounded pure, elegant, and moral on paper, actual implementation proved to be a far more complex challenge. The first significant national attempt at socialism emerged not from class struggle but amid the ruin of an empire. Following the Russian Revolution in 1917, Vladimir Lenin inherited a nation grappling with widespread hunger, illiteracy, and stark backwardness. The monarchy had crumbled. The old elite either fled or faced execution. Suddenly, this vast territory housing 150 million people required an entirely new governance framework. In response, the Soviet government established state ownership over land, factories, banks, and resources. Bureaucrats set prices, replacing profit motives with production quotas. Private enterprise was abolished entirely in an effort to establish equality and efficiency. In theory, this should have cultivated a utopia where equitable distribution flourished. Yet in practice, it spiraled into chaos. Without market-driven prices guiding their decisions, planners struggled to comprehend what people desired or how much to produce. The absence of competition stifled innovation within factories. Moreover, without personal incentives tied to performance, workers found little motivation to exceed basic requirements. As scarcity became commonplace and long queues formed for even basic necessities became a cultural norm, agriculture, the backbone of Russia's economy, collapsed under the weight of famine. Ultimately, Lenin was compelled to retreat from his original policies by permitting limited private trade just for the sake of survival. Curiously enough, despite these setbacks and failures associated with socialism, its appeal endured among many citizens. This was largely due to capitalism's own shortcomings during that period. It too appeared far from ideal. By the dawn of the 20th century, while capitalism had generated extraordinary growth potential and wealth creation opportunities for some individuals, it also fostered rampant instability that left many feeling insecure. Speculation ran rampant across markets while monopolies began dominating various industries. The wealthy enjoyed lives akin to modern royalty while vast numbers of people struggled daily to make ends meet. Although capitalism proved effective at generating wealth overall, it was equally disastrous when it came to fair distribution among society's members. In this turbulent landscape of competing ideologies and economic theories stood a stark reminder that both systems harbored inherent challenges that could lead societies down precarious paths, one towards oppressive control under socialism and another towards reckless disparity under capitalism. The imbalance reached a critical point in 1929 when the United States stock market crashed, leading to the most catastrophic failure of capitalism in history. The Great Depression was not merely a recession. It represented a global economic cardiac arrest. Banks collapsed en masse, and unemployment soared to levels previously thought unimaginable, with 1 in 4 individuals jobless. Entire nations witnessed the utter destruction of their financial systems, leaving millions of observers convinced that capitalism was not just flawed but fundamentally fatal. By the dawn of the 1930s, the world confronted an uncomfortable reality. No economic system functioned as it had been advertised. Socialism promised equality and fairness but delivered widespread shortages and inefficiencies. Meanwhile, capitalism boasted about prosperity yet resulted in monumental failures and despair. Then came a pivotal event that would alter the course of history, the Second World War. The conflict forced every major economy to test its system under extreme pressure and adversity. The Soviet Union, despite its well-documented inefficiencies, managed to mobilize its entire population with an alarming speed and remarkable discipline. State control enabled it to redirect all available resources towards survival efforts during these tumultuous times. Concurrently, capitalist nations like the United States transformed into industrial powerhouses, showcasing how effective private innovation could be when backed by coordinated national efforts. The saga unfolds long before the terms capitalism or socialism were even uttered. For a significant portion of humanity's past, economies did not resemble what we recognize today. Rather than abstract systems of commerce, they were primarily about survival. Monarchs claimed divine rights to rule while landowners monopolized nearly all resources. Peasants produced just enough to stave off starvation. Progress was agonizingly slow, akin to glaciers inching forward over eons. For thousands of years, human existence operated under a zero-sum paradigm. When one individual ascended in fortune or status, another inevitably faced decline. When the war concluded, the scoreboard shifted from ideological battles to tangible metrics. GDP figures, infrastructure development, economic growth rates, and living standards became the new benchmarks for success. From 1945 until 1991, the world morphed into a vast experimental arena. On one side stood the Soviet bloc, characterized by centralized planning, state control over production, and suppressed markets. On the other side were the United States and its allies, embracing regulated capitalism along with private entrepreneurship while establishing safety nets rooted in lessons learned from the Great Depression era. This period marked a genuine experiment in contrasting ideologies rather than mere manifestos or rhetorical speeches. It was defined by millions of individuals experiencing real-life consequences of these systems. The outcomes were as dramatic as they were painful. In the early decades following World War II, the Soviet Union experienced rapid industrialization that dramatically reshaped its economy. Illiteracy rates plummeted as education initiatives took hold. Housing construction expanded to accommodate urban population swelling due to industrial jobs. Military capabilities soared to unprecedented heights as resources were funneled into defense sectors. Yet beneath this impressive facade lay systemic cracks threatening everything they built. Without market signals or price mechanisms guiding production decisions, the economy devolved into absurd inefficiencies. Factories met quotas by producing goods that held little value for consumers while agricultural farms delivered subpar harvests riddled with spoilage. Innovation stagnated alarmingly. By the 1970s, Soviet consumer technology lagged decades behind global standards. A nation capable of building advanced rockets found itself unable to manufacture decent refrigerators. In contrast, capitalism adapted through trial and error during this tumultuous period. Businesses learned from past mistakes and began innovating again in response to consumer demands rather than merely fulfilling state mandates. This dynamic interplay between regulation and entrepreneurship would ultimately shape a new landscape where creativity flourished amid competition and resilience became synonymous with progress across capitalist economies worldwide. In the aftermath of the Great Depression, governments around the globe implemented a variety of regulations aimed at stabilizing their economies. This included the introduction of deposit insurance, antitrust laws, social welfare programs, public health systems, and unemployment benefits. While capitalism did not transform into a perfectly equitable system, it evolved into a more sustainable one. The lessons learned from past failures became vital for its survival, and this adaptability emerged as one of capitalism's greatest strengths. By the 1980s, the economic divide between different regions became glaringly evident. The standard of living in Western nations soared dramatically, while the economy of the Soviet Union stagnated. The Cold War was not won through ideological superiority. Rather, it was determined by economic efficiency and resilience. By the time the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, it was clear that the debate surrounding capitalism versus communism had reached its conclusion. The Soviet Union was not defeated by military might or invasion. Instead, it succumbed to empty store shelves, diminished incentives for productivity, and an economy that could no longer keep pace with modern demands. The very system designed to eliminate inequality inadvertently fostered new elites, party officials, bureaucrats, and insiders, while ordinary citizens found themselves waiting in long lines for basic necessities like bread. A structure intended to manage market chaos ultimately crumbled under its own rigid planning and control mechanisms. When concrete data finally emerged, they painted a harsh reality. Western economies exhibited greater productivity rates, innovation levels, and adaptability. However, this triumphant phase of capitalism was short-lived. Despite the Cold War's conclusion, underlying economic contradictions persisted. As society moved into the 90s and 2000s, capitalism began yet another transformation, one that defied predictions made by 19th-century theorists. Financial markets exploded with activity. Global supply chains stretched across continents. Credit flooded markets like never before. Inequality surged once more, reaching proportions reminiscent of the Gilded Age. Corporations evolved into multinational behemoths wielding immense power over economies. Entire nations found themselves increasingly reliant on debt accumulation, speculative investments, and asset bubbles that threatened financial stability. The financial crisis of 2008 struck with an eerie familiarity, a stark reminder that capitalism's inherent instability had not vanished. It had merely re-emerged in a different guise. Wealth was derived from land cultivation, hard labor, and military conquest. The productivity of labor advanced at an almost imperceptible rate during these times. The notion that ordinary individuals could amass wealth through trade or innovation would have seemed preposterous to those living in such eras. Then came the Industrial Revolution, a seismic shift that transformed the world dramatically. Simultaneously, socialism experienced a resurgence, not in its traditional Soviet form but rather as a softer, more nostalgic iteration. Calls for wealth taxes gained traction alongside movements advocating for nationalized healthcare and free education became prominent parts of political discourse. Labor unions grew stronger once again as many countries initiated measures aimed at restoring economic balance. A younger generation burdened by soaring housing costs and stagnant wages began to question whether capitalism truly served anyone aside from the affluent elite. Debates reignited across various platforms but now featured an intriguing twist. Discussions were no longer solely about capitalism's merits versus those of socialism. They also examined how both systems could coexist or adapt to better serve society at large. This time, there appears to be a widespread reluctance to embrace either pure capitalism or pure socialism. The lessons of history have made the need for compromise painfully clear and evident to many. Take a closer look at contemporary Scandinavia, often mistakenly labeled as purely socialist. These nations boast vibrant free markets, thriving private enterprises, and significant multinational corporations. However, they also impose high taxes, maintain robust social safety nets, and feature powerful labor unions. This creates a unique blend of capitalism with protective measures, an intricate mixed economy designed to alleviate inequality while fostering innovation. Now consider the United States, a quintessential capitalist nation distinguished by its remarkable capacity for innovation, deep financial systems, and profound global influence. Yet it grapples with severe wealth disparities, crumbling infrastructure, inaccessible healthcare services, and a dwindling middle class. The juxtaposition of these elements underscores the complexities inherent in any economic system. Next, turn your attention to China, the most fascinating case of all. As the world's largest authoritarian capitalist economy, it presents a unique narrative. Beijing refers to its system as socialism with Chinese characteristics, yet it resembles state-controlled capitalism. Private enterprises drive economic growth while the government exerts control over strategic industries. Markets can thrive only when they align with national priorities. Despite its rapid growth and development, even China is not immune to contradictions. Debt-fueled expansion, real estate bubbles, demographic declines, and slowing productivity are all pressing challenges facing the nation. When viewed from a distance, the underlying truth becomes almost embarrassingly simple. Every major economy today represents a hybrid model. It is an amalgamation of market dynamics and governmental authority, incentives juxtaposed with protectionism, freedom balanced by oversight. This situation has arisen not because ideologies have failed but due to the realities that compel compromise in practice. When different systems confront genuine human behaviors, ambition, greed, fear, complacency, and creativity, none of the established theoretical frameworks can withstand scrutiny under real-world conditions. The uncomfortable lesson drawn from this analysis is that economic systems shape individuals far less than individuals shape economic systems themselves. Human nature persists irrespective of whether one subscribes to socialism or capitalism. It merely manifests in various forms depending on the structure in place. In an environment dominated by pure capitalism, greed often morphs into innovation, until it crosses the line into exploitation. Conversely, under strictly socialist regimes, equality can evolve into unity, but this too can devolve into repression over time. Within market-based economies, power tends to concentrate through wealth accumulation. In planned economies, such authority consolidates through political channels. Thus, we see contrasting systems grappling with identical human tendencies that persist regardless of ideology. By the late 18th century, Britain became a veritable cauldron of coal-powered industry, ironworks, financial capital, and unquenchable ambition. Machines began to replace human muscle. Factories took over from traditional workshops as centers of production. This marked the emergence of a new kind of authority, the dominance of private capital. For the first time in history, individuals could invest substantial sums, embrace risks on unprecedented scales, and own properties that were once accessible only to monarchs and nobles. This intricate interplay between human behavior and economic structures reveals that our understanding must adapt continuously as societies evolve and face new challenges. Each model presents its own unique set of advantages and drawbacks, ultimately leading us to reconsider how we define success within our global landscape. Different forms of propaganda share similar flaws. The critical question is not, which system is superior, but rather, which system possesses the most effective mechanisms for limiting power, correcting mistakes, and promoting beneficial behaviors. History provides a clear answer. The system that thrives is the one that can adapt. Capitalism has endured because it has continuously reinvented itself, from a hands-off approach to the New Deal, embracing financial globalization and technological capitalism. In contrast, socialism collapsed in places that resisted change, such as the Soviet Union, Maoist China, and North Korea. Yet socialism flourished where it integrated with market dynamics. In Scandinavia, China post-1978, despite its authoritarian leanings, and certain regions of Western Europe. Ideology did not determine the victors. Adaptation did. To understand why this is the case does not require an advanced degree in economics. It simply necessitates recognizing what each system prioritizes at its core. Capitalism emphasizes incentives above all else. When functioning optimally, it unleashes creativity, risk-taking tendencies, and productivity. People engage in building infrastructure, innovating technologies, and experimenting with new ideas, motivated by personal gain and potential rewards. However, this model also has a darker side. It generates inequality, instability, and cycles that disproportionately harm the vulnerable segments of society. On the other hand, socialism focuses on equality as its foundational principle. When effectively implemented, it reduces poverty levels, broadens access to resources, and ensures basic human dignity for all citizens. Yet, without sufficient incentives in place, productivity can stagnate. Additionally, in the absence of competitive markets, valuable information tends to deteriorate or become misallocated. Moreover, without transparent institutions to uphold accountability, corruption can thrive unchecked. Both systems have their strengths and weaknesses. They are both scarred by historical events that shaped their trajectories. The contemporary world we inhabit is constructed upon these scars. Every social safety net program, regulatory framework, market rule, welfare initiative, and financial instrument contains traces of this enduring struggle between ideologies. The mixed economy we currently experience does not signify a definitive victory for one system over another. Rather, it illustrates that neither can survive independently. However, what many individuals often overlook is that the discourse surrounding economic systems is evolving once more. The challenges of the 21st century, such as the disruptive potential of artificial intelligence, AI, demographic shifts leading to collapse in some regions, climate risks necessitating urgent attention, energy transitions towards sustainability, and rising global debt, are indifferent to ideological frameworks. These challenges expose vulnerabilities inherent within both systems. Market-driven capitalism grapples with long-term planning deficits while struggling to foster social cohesion among diverse populations. Conversely, socialist planning faces hurdles related to flexibility and innovation needed to respond swiftly to rapidly changing circumstances. As we navigate this complex landscape characterized by intertwined economies and fluctuating ideologies, it becomes increasingly apparent that adaptive strategies will be crucial for future success. Both sides must recognize their limitations while learning from one another's strengths. Only through collaboration can societies hope to forge resilient systems capable of addressing contemporary crises effectively. Thus emerges a pressing need for dialogue aimed at merging insights from both capitalist incentives and socialist equity, leading us toward more sustainable solutions for all members of society in an ever-evolving global context. Countries that are poised to thrive in the coming century will be those that skillfully integrate two vital elements: market creativity alongside the resilience of governmental investment, and private innovation with effective state management. The balance between freedom and stability is crucial for any nation's success. The lessons learned from the previous century highlight that no system can function optimally without protective barriers. A robust economy cannot endure without incentives that drive growth, just as a society cannot flourish when wealth or power becomes excessively concentrated, whether in the hands of billionaires or bureaucrats. History did not favor capitalism over socialism, nor vice versa. Rather, it chose pathways that prevented systemic collapse. Each generation faces the challenge of reassessing this equilibrium, as the ongoing debate has never truly centered on capitalism versus socialism. Instead, it revolves around who wields control within each framework, be it capitalists, governments, banks, labor unions, corporations, political parties, or regulatory bodies. The essence of struggle throughout history has consistently been about power. Power does not vanish. It simply shifts from one entity to another over time. This cyclical nature of authority reveals profound insights into societal dynamics and governance. Understanding these movements can illuminate current challenges and future trajectories, encouraging us to explore deeper into historical patterns and their implications for contemporary life. By examining these themes closely, we may uncover valuable perspectives that shape our understanding of social and economic structures today. As labor productivity surged like never before, wage disparities widened alarmingly. While some workers saw their earnings increase significantly, poverty for others deepened considerably. Inequality escalated at a pace previously unseen in any society throughout history. Urban centers became enveloped in pollution. Children labored for 12 hours a day under miserable conditions. Slums bred rampant disease and despair. Yet amid this grim landscape lies an undeniable truth. Capitalism generated greater quantities of goods and wealth than humanity had ever known before. It was not merely an economic system but also a catalyst for change that birthed socialism. Not as an idealistic dream but as a desperate response to the harsh realities wrought by industrial capitalism's excesses. As people confronted the brutal exploitation inherent in capitalist practices, where profit often overshadowed human dignity, they sought alternatives that promised more equitable outcomes for all members of society. Thus began an ideological battle that would continue to evolve through wars and social movements across generations. In this ongoing clash between two powerful forces, each claiming to offer better futures, we witness not only differing philosophies regarding wealth distribution, but also profound questions about justice and human welfare itself. The historical narrative surrounding these competing ideologies remains complex and multifaceted, reflecting humanity's enduring struggle for meaning within its economic pursuits. By the mid-19th century, writers like Leopold Hartmann and Emil Fischer observed the grim realities of industrial life: smoke billowing from chimneys, workers rising in protest, and factories drenched in sweat and suffering. Their reflections led them to a radical conclusion: the entire system was fundamentally flawed. They perceived capitalist wealth as nothing more than the fruits of stolen labor, clever subterfuge masquerading as opportunity. Their vision proposed that if workers were to collectively own the means of production, with profits equitably distributed and manufacturing directed toward fulfilling human needs rather than lining individual pockets, society could finally achieve true justice.